Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this episode, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland and Disneyland history with mementos, snapshots, and postcards sent from Disneyland from 1955 to the present. Today I'm starting off by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join and receive mail from my desk or from my Disneyland trips. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the e-ticket patrons Tania, Eric Daniels, Joe Gamble, Scott Booker, Monica Seitz Vega, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, Scott Cagle, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Grace Coate, Brian Crawford, Ben and Noel Bruning, Patty Wolin, Angela Reynolds, Greg Gorley, and Aaron Moran. B-ticket patrons Jeff and Paige Orton, and Joshua, and Exorable Tosh Bell. And the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Maggie and Henry Byers, Angel DeBlois, and the All Aboard podcast. You can also sign up for my new newsletter for a chance to get some postcards delivered by the USPS to your mailbox. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has the facade of the Circarama building in Tomorrowland as it looked in 1955. On the back it reads, "A tempting glance into Tomorrowland, one of Disneyland's 5 realms where science and industry present imaginative exhibits, and all ages can enjoy rides designed for the future." It's postmarked August 7th with a Garden Grove cancel and a 3-cent purple Liberty postage stamp, Scott number 1035. Based on the postmark and the stamp, let's assume they visited the park on Saturday, August 6, 1960, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. The weather was a high of 81 and a low of 60. Park attendance that day was 37,959. It's addressed to Miss Margarita Storniolo of Roxbury, Massachusetts. It reads, "Dear Margarita, I'm having a wonderful time visiting all the places in sunny California. Kay Hanning." Since this episode will be released when I'm in Boston, I thought it would be fun to look at the time that Walt visited the city. Whenever I travel, I always look in my copy of Walt's Pilgrimage by Christopher W. Tremblay. Looking at the entry for Massachusetts, Walt visited the Boston area twice. The first time was to accept an honorary degree from Harvard. Looking at the sources in Tremblay's book brought me to an essay by Michael Barrier, which chronicles the correspondence leading up to the graduation ceremony. The year was 1938, and Disney had just released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Walt was contacted by 3 universities who invited him to receive honorary degrees. The first was the University of Southern California, who presented him with an honorary master's degree. On June 4, 1938, the president of the university, Rufus B. von Kleinsmid, was quoted to say Walt was selected for this honor for, quote, "bringing the youngsters the spirit of innocent childhood and bringing the oldsters a bit of their second childhood." When the news broke that Walt Disney had been asked to attend the Harvard graduation, the Boston Traveler ran a front-page story, as this was the first time Harvard would be giving this honor to someone from Hollywood and the film industry. Since this podcast loves mailed correspondence, I'll read the letter that Walt wrote to Dr. James B. Conant in response to the offer of the honorary degree in fine arts. March 14, 1938. Dear Dr. Conant, I'm greatly honored to know that the governing boards of Harvard University have voted to confer upon me the honorary degree of Master of Fine Arts on commencement day, June 23rd. Please extend to the board my gratitude and appreciation. We are exceedingly busy with production right now, but it is quite possible by the middle of June, work will be at a stage where I am able to get away for a short time at least. Therefore, I shall begin at once to arrange my schedule so that I may be present at Harvard on June 23rd to accept the honor. It is entirely agreeable to me that you use my full name, Walter Elias Disney, in conferring the degree as well as in the engrossing of the diploma. No doubt I shall hear from you further prior to the above date, and let me thank you again for extending me this invitation. Sincerely yours, Walt Disney. At the time, Walt and the studio were busy with animated shorts and working on the feature films Pinocchio and Fantasia. Great news, Enfield Post is back up on Etsy. Grabbing some vintage stamps is a great way to plus your mail. Whether you're trying to match the color of your postcard or envelope, or adding a themed stamp to the back of your mail, be sure to check out Enfield Post. You can head over to EnfieldPost.com and explore all the different vintage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and EnfieldPost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has the omnibus near Town Square. In the background, you can see City Hall and the horse-drawn streetcar. On the back, it reads, Disneyland Omnibus. Disneyland's 5/8 scale double-decker omnibus carries hundreds of passengers daily on a fun-filled tour. Camera fans especially like the unique angles the omnibus's second deck provides. It's postmarked July 9th, 1973, with the U.S. Postal Service Always Use Zip Codes cancel and an 80 CTS Guerrero Aéreo Mexico airmail postage stamp with a red rubber stamp with no such address and addressee unknown checked. I assume they visit the park on Sunday, July 8th, 1973, when park hours were from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. The weather was a high of 77 and a low of 63. It's addressed to Miss Lelia Smith of New Haven, Connecticut. It reads, Hello, sweet. Having a great time, and I also miss you. Keep sweet, Roland Brunson. One challenge that came up with Walt receiving the honorary degree came from another Ivy League school. Yale in New Haven, Connecticut also expressed interest in presenting Walt with an honorary degree. In the article, it is mentioned that Yale had been interested in bestowing this honor as far back as 1935, based on his work with the creation of Mickey Mouse, commenting that Mickey Mouse became a global ambassador and a representative of goodwill. Unfortunately, the letter offering the commendation, although sent on February 15th before the Harvard letter, Walt did not receive it until March 22nd. Walt explained to Yale that he had already been scheduled to receive an honor from Harvard on June 23rd, and they responded that it would be fine, and that their ceremony would be held on June 22nd, and he could attend both. This prompted a letter back to Harvard asking permission and asking if it was appropriate to accept 2 honorary degrees from rival colleges. Harvard replied that it would be fine, just to be cautious of attending 2 ceremonies in a row might be exhausting. Walt and Lillian took a train from Los Angeles to New York the weekend before the commencements. They stayed with a university official in New Haven the night before the Yale graduation, and then promptly left for Cambridge for Harvard's commencement. After receiving both honorary degrees, Walt attended a day of Harvard versus Yale boat races. And for the first time since 1916, Harvard swept Yale in all the events of the day. The second time Walt went to Cambridge and to Harvard was to meet with one of the professors to talk about a Donald Duck short that would be coming out in the mid-40s. This incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is an online craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. Be sure to check out Monday's ATD, which is usually hosted by paper artist Russ Romano. I've seen many amazing art projects, learned about awesome postmarks, postage stamp history, and a lot more on different episodes. It's great to stop in for an hour to watch someone craft or design something unique. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard has concept art from Alice in Wonderland of Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It's postmarked May 29, 2024, with an Anaheim cancel and a 37-cent Mickey, Donald, and Goofy postage stamp, and a 41-cent Mickey as a Sorcerer's Apprentice postage stamp. Scott numbers 3865 and 4192, respectively. It reads, May 28, 2024. Sent from Disneyland, sent from Frontierland, Betsy, at Mermaids and Mailboxes. Thank you so much for the postcard, Betsy. I love the decorations of all the Daiso washi tape as well. Betsy contacted me before her trip in May to find out where all the Disneyland mailboxes were located. I sent a detailed description for each land and photos of all the boxes, although by the time Betsy went, Critter Country mailboxes were not accessible. I did get a nice handful of postcards from Betsy from her trip, including some fun vintage ones and some postcards from other parks. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would be helpful to share your favorite episode to a friend or on social media. There are over 200 to choose from. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment at whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/SentFromDisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sent from Disneyland, or on Twitter at Sent from Disney. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent from Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to its host and guest of the Sent from Disneyland podcast.